It looks, we're just going to be going live here in about 35 seconds on YouTube Live. So I got a little bit of that gist of it. Thank you for your comments, Etan. We really appreciate that. So it's great. And Douglas, it's amazing coming full circle in all this, right? In the last little while. So. Okay, so here we go. We are going to get things rolling. And first of all, we obviously want to just welcome everybody, of course, to the KoreSummit Webinar Series 2021. My name is Oscar Joffrey. I'll tell you the rest all about me, but you can find it online. But the real key people today are my fellow panelists that are here that are we're going to have a great discussion. So if you've been to our webinars before, it's pretty straightforward. We are no PowerPoint slides, no propaganda, just basically thought leaders that are doing it day in and day out, giving you their experiences related to these amended regulations that are happening. So the format is simple: 1 hour, 45 minutes of us chit-chatting a bit, and then 15 minutes. There's a little button there at the bottom. You can put your hand up and ask questions. And of course, just so you know, all of these webinars are recorded. You can find them at KoreSummit.io. You can also find all their speakers and all their contact details. That's right. We don't have to give up any information to us. You can reach out to them directly and start engaging. But before we do that, before we get the topic started, let's hear from our panel. Let's have the introductions first. Etan, please.
So thank you, Oscar. Once again, I become somewhat of a regular on these Core Connects panels. And Oscar, you've done a good job making it a lot easier for the viewers. Back in the day, we used to have to give our name and our email address back when this started. But now the Core Connects team has made it really easy and kind of put everything together into one platform. So my name is Etan Butler. I am the chairman at Dalmore Group. We are a FINRA and SEC registered broker-dealer investment bank. We are headquartered in New York, active and licensed in all 50 states, founded in 2005. Our roots are in investment banking and corporate advisory, and we're still quite active in investment banking today. Since 2015 or so, we've been really immersed in the revisions to some of the Jobs Act-born exemptions that took place at the time, in particular, Reg D 506C, more recently RegA, which is why we're here today, and also Reg CF. On the Reg A side, we've been extraordinarily active over the last year and a half, 2 years. We currently have close to 100 Reg A offerings, Reg A clients. A number of our Reg A offerings we've been fortunate enough to be the broker dealer on some of the most successful Reg A offerings in history, meaning offerings that have raised their full offering objectives and have gone on to either launch another Reg A or who are now listed and traded on NASDAQ or on the OTC or the Canadian exchanges or the Frankfurt exchanges, et cetera. It's something that we live and breathe. It's something that I personally talk with, every half hour of every day. It feels like I'm talking with another company that's considering launching a Reg A. I have a lot to share. It's a passion of mine, and I'm really pleased to be here.
I forgot I muted myself. All right, Douglas, we have a new guest that if you've attended our webinars, as Etan alluded to, but it's always good to remind people, sometimes we pigeonhole companies into what they do. In Dalmore, it's very wide. You're meeting all the requirements of all the different regulations, which is great. And Douglas is a new partner in our ecosystem. I'm really excited to have Doug here because it's a role people don't actually understand why it's so important. I call it the quarterback. And if you all love football, and of course, don't forget Super Bowl weekend, it's the quarterback plays a really great role, but it's part of a team. So Douglas, please.
Thank you, Oscar. So my name is Doug Ruark, and I'm president of Regulation D Resources. We have been operating since 1999. And our core focus is the advisement and preparation of Regulation D and Regulation A+ securities offerings. And so our role in the process is to work with clients that are looking to execute a securities offering and need to get everything structured. They need to get all of their offering documents drafted. They need to go through the filing process with the SEC. And then, typically we're there to provide compliance support as they move forward and execute their offering. We were huge proponents of the Jobs Act and 506C. We were actively lobbying the SEC through the 2000s as we watched social media develop and the internet develop, and we saw all these great tools for being able to go out and promote an offering and engage with investors. And we were all working with these antiquated rules of the old Reg D private placement rules where you couldn't generally solicit anybody. So for us, 506C was a revelation as far as democratizing people being able to go out and raise money, and also with RegA Plus and being able to streamline that process and provide a good middle ground between doing a Reg D but having the limitations of a 506C as far as accredited investors, but not going to a full S1 registration with all of the compliance and the regulatory overhead that comes with that. So we're big fans of both. We're really excited about RegA Plus. We feel like it's a great solution for a lot of companies, and really excited to be part of this panel and give some people background on what it takes to put one of these offerings in place, and obviously the preparation work needed to come into the process and have it be an efficient process to get to the point where you're qualified and you can launch your offering.
Perfect. Well, that was quite the intro. Dun, dun, dun. So you guys are going to have to find it that I'm not your traditional, I like to spark it up a bit because I know what it's like sitting there, 11:30 in the morning. For some people it's 8:30 in the morning, sometimes later. We're very thankful for you sitting here patiently to listen to us. And, if you've been listening to a lot of our webinars, I think we've been taking the topics. And by the way, the topics came directly from people who come to meetings and say, what about this? What about this? And we made them into webinars. And sometimes even out of the webinars, we keep coming up with new topics as we've done in the last couple. But today we're going to talk about how do I prepare for my RegA Plus? And this is a little bit different than, what we've talked about before. Preparation is, quite often there are those who already have experience raising capital. So they kind of know that. But the real question is, where do I start? That's a fundamental question. Is it the lawyer, the auditor, the broker dealer, the investor acquisition? And I'm going to start with you, Chan, because obviously you've had more offerings in RegA. So you've seen everything from A to Z. So, but if the ideal client came to you today and whatever stage they're in, where do you recommend that they start that process?
Right. So first, we always suggest that you get a experienced securities counsel to talk about what your options are, to talk about what you can and can't do, and ultimately their role is to advise and help you draft your offering circular, which is called the 1A, and ultimately file your 1A with the SEC, seeking qualification from the SEC. Right, so that's a process that could take some time, and that allows you to really understand what you can and can't do, and you can bounce some ideas off them if they're experienced enough about what's the right valuation, what's the right structure, what's been your experience, any jurisdiction issues, what type of investors, et cetera. So that's an important place to start. The other thing that you're going to need is you're going to need audited financials, right? So for a RegA, you need 2 years audited financial statements. If you are a new company, then obviously you don't have 2 years. If you're a brand new company, you need to audit nothing, right? But it still has a cost and you still need to do it. So you need an audit, right? So you're going to want to find an auditor, and you're going to want to find someone who's cost effective and has time to really, deliver in the time frame that you need. Once you have those in place, you're going to want to engage a broker dealer. At latest, I would say 3 weeks or so prior to your securities attorney having a draft 1A ready to file with the SEC, because that will give your broker dealer the time to run their bad actor checks and due diligence and answer any questions that you might have, and really be a value add to bring in other resources beyond just the broker dealer role, right? So there's the broker dealer. Then you're going to need You're going to need to decide what type of technology you want to use, right? There's plenty of choices that you have. You could choose to list on one of many marketplace type platforms out there, if there's pros and cons to that, or you could choose to do it yourself and have your own offering page or an Invest Now button installed right on the home screen of your website, right? So those are options that you have, and there's pros and cons, and we have a lot to share about that as well. So then you have the technology, and then you need to think about, okay, I have an offering page, whether I'm listed on a marketplace or whether I do it myself. Trust me, you're going to need to really have a solid marketing plan. You're going to need to take investor acquisition very seriously. For some issuers who are fortunate enough to have celebrities as their partners, they might be able to leverage their millions of followers. For others who are lucky to be consumer product brands and have hundreds of thousands of loyal users, congratulations, it might be a lot easier for you. But for most people, they really need to take investor acquisition very seriously, because ultimately you're going to pay the money to have a live Invest Now button on your page. But guess what? No one's going to go there until you help them get there and let the world know that you exist. So investor acquisition is critical, and as is PR. Right. And so investor acquisition is obviously very important, and that's something that you want to focus on sooner than later, because that goes into who your demographic is. That goes into what your investment minimum should be. So you want to leverage their experience that they've had with similar clients going through this process before, because that's going to impact everything from the content to the marketing to the strategy that you have going into it. And obviously you're going to need a transfer agent, right? And really, the transfer agent is a critical role, and it's often overlooked. But the transfer agent is really, after the raise is done, when everyone else walks away and packs their bags, the transfer agent's the one that's handling shareholder communication, that's keeping the track of the shareholders and the cap table. So it's becoming more and more critical, I think. And Oscar speaks about this a lot recently, to include the right type of transfer agent sooner than later. Right, so in the beginning rather than later, and that just brings more efficiencies to the process. And oftentimes that's considered the last step, but I'm an advocate of thinking about that in the beginning as well, so it's not a surprise and you don't run into any issues going forward. And those are really the main players that you need going into this. And you want to deal with folks that have done this before, right? You don't want to try this out with someone who's new. You want as much predictability and experience as possible going through this. There's a lot of moving parts. It's seamless to folks that have done this before and have worked together with other service providers. But for the first time entrepreneur, it's going to seem like a lot of different pieces. So anyway, I could go on and on, but I'll take a break.
No, actually, Tom, thank you. I mean, most important, I think let's make sure we all agree on this, because I think for those who are listening in, the very first point he said is a securities lawyer. Yeah. I think we're all saying this to all of you all at the same time. Securities lawyer number one. I think, Douglas, I'll go to you, because you're playing the quarterback role. You're getting them really at the stage where they want to do it, and they retain the services of your firm because you bring those pieces together. So obviously I want to concentrate on that part. Where do I start? Because I want to move into the next part. This is an area we don't talk about a lot, but I want to give you an opportunity to guide us through what you're providing, that, what Eitan was leading to.
Absolutely. So Eitan really hit a lot of good points there. So our firm, we're really on the front lines of actually getting that work done, as far as the drafting of the Form 1A, working on all of the structure. Our in-house securities attorneys, are there to prepare that file, get it ready for SEC submission. But I think, a couple things to touch upon if you're contemplating doing a Reg A plus. First of all is plan ahead, because this is not a Reg D offering. It's not a Reg CF. This is a heavy lift. And, you're basically doing an S1 filing when it comes to the disclosures. There are a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of players that have to get pulled into the game to make sure this offering executes properly. Transfer agents, broker dealers, CPAs. So I think the first thing that I always try and get people to understand, and when we really try and push it in our social media, is plan ahead. Don't think you're going to get through this process in 60 or 90 days. It's not going to happen. And part of it too then comes down to, when we're working with clients, one of the things that I see is that they really kind of need to work on corporate cleanup. And a lot of times we might be dealing with a client where they've built their business, it's a couple core partners, but they don't have employment agreements with senior executives, for example. And so these are sorts of things that a lot of times when they show up at our doorstep, we're having to unwind some things. We're having to work with them on corporate cleanup. So I think it's a big part of doing a RegA Plus and getting through it efficiently is understanding that it is a complex process. We're going to need information. And that's another thing that I really stress with people is, your one-page executive summaries, that's not going to cut it. We need detailed information on the company, its history, cap table data, important agreements, management team, so, and I can obviously walk through some of that. I kind of have a couple, I figure I could walk through what a real estate fund would look like in an operating company. But the point is some of the challenges and bottlenecks we see with people is that they just come into this process not understanding the complexity of it, or they've come out of like a Reg D offering, a Reg CF, and think, hey, in 45 or 60 days, we're going to be launched and raising money. And that's just not the reality. Now, with that said, the time and effort and the money to put one of these in place, yes, it takes longer. Yes, it's a heavier lift. It's a more detailed, complex process, but you do have a fantastic vehicle at the end of the process. And I think then, what Eitan was talking about is also important, which is have a plan for promotion. You're not just going to put your offering up on a website and have subscriptions coming in. I mean, it's possible, and there are companies that maybe have been operating for a long time and have really deep social media assets, and that's the plan, is they're going to go out and sell into their social media asset bases. But having that marketing plan, having the right team in place, those are really key. And that's a big part of what we do then, is when we engage the client, a lot of what we're doing is helping put those pieces in place, but obviously getting that core part done, which is the drafting of the Form 1A, assembling all the exhibits, getting it filed. So like I said, we're really kind of on the front lines and dealing with the client there, and managing client expectations can be a challenge, because like I said, they may have a different view of what this process ought to look like, because maybe they've done a Reg D in the past. And so part of our job is to try and educate people on what it really takes to put one of these offerings in place.
Yeah, and it's true. I think we're evolving as an industry. This is true. I mean, we're calling 2021 the breakout year. One, look at the gift we're getting. It's official. We're going to $75 million. Eitan touched in a bit at the beginning that how we all got started, we were putting pieces together. Putting pieces together was great. People may go, oh, look, it was bad. You can always look back and say it was bad. It's not about the fact that it's bad. That's what we had then. We're moving forward. There's a different demand occurring because there's a different end game now. And it is true. There's a lot of companies really have a misunderstanding of it. And we talked about all the requirements. We talked about having the lawyer, the broker dealer, the transfer agent, the technology provider, investor acquisition. But there's one area that I think we also need to bring out, and that is, and again, this is purely from experience because you've both been working with clients. So how big of a team do you think one needs? And I'm not trying to say they should have a full out or anything, because I've seen it once and I've seen both, and I'm sure Eitan, you've seen both, but it does change how you can roll out. And I'd love to hear your comment on that, because everybody should have this understanding, all the different pieces that are going to be needed. And if you're one person, you are going to get torn apart. I could be wrong, but your comments would be great on this.
So that's particularly applicable with regard to the fact that the online capital raising, you're raising capital in small increments from many people. And we've had offerings with tens of thousands of investors. And so investor relations becomes something that is easy to overlook, but very important. You're spending a big budget on media, on promotion, and you have all these investors that are coming in. 20–30% of them are going to click on the Invest Now button of your offering, but for whatever reason, they're not going to make it through to putting their subscription, signing their subscription agreement, putting their credit card information in, following through with the wire transfer. So it's critical that you have a plan to reach out to these individuals in an automated way, where your system says, "Hey, Mr. Investor, you this is where you left off. You're at stage 2 out of stage 5 of the process. Here's a link for you to continue," and to continuously send them that. You'd be surprised that really is very helpful in an automated way. You also need to have people that are able to answer the phone, or even proactively reach out to folks that have not made it through. Doing that with one person is very challenging, right? So you either need to be prepared for that internally, to have at least 2–3 people, that are ready to monitor investor behavior and activity, where each lead that has come into your ecosystem, where they are and where they need to be, and reaching out to them proactively. Or you need to hire a company that's going to assist you in that process, right? So as far as from a team perspective, I would say that it's most applicable during the raise, when you have thousands of potential investors who you really need to complete the process, right? Beyond that, there's not that. I don't think there's a great need to have an extensive team internally. If you are hiring folks to do your IR and your marketing, that's fine. There's incredible companies. There's more of them. They've gotten a lot smarter over time. They have more data. And what I love about the investor acquisition companies that we work with is more and more of them are turning clients down. They're not just they're not just quickly trying to take all the money off the table right now. They understand reputation's key here. This isn't a quick thing. We're just getting started. And RegA is literally just getting started. So the smart thing to do is to be cost effective to clients. Think long term. If you do right by them and they're happy, they're going to hire you month 2, month 3, month 4. If you start off with the CF, they're going to hire you for the A. And it's a small community, right? The KoreConnects community, as much as it's growing, it's still a cottage industry, right? We're still all kind of together. We all know each other. But the point being is that you don't need to have a huge team, right? You need to have enough people or enough resources externally to really handle investor relations and marketing.
And so on the other side, I mean, that you're right. There's enough providers now in selecting. We're going to get to that question, selecting the right partner. We're going to nail on that one. But on the team side, obviously, Douglas, your firm is taking on, as you said, if you're coming with a 1-page executive summary, that isn't going to cut it. And it's not because you need that information. I just want to be very clear. It's because the information you're gathering is to file it with the SEC. It's the SEC that's requiring it. But what burden or, what kind of resources do they need to have just for that part to make sure that they do it in a timely fashion?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to drill back to that plan ahead. If they're going to come into this process, they really should have, first of all, build some narrative out about your business, the company's history, its products and services, its marketing plan. Have any key agreements, distribution agreements, and what have you. Have those in hand. Shareholder agreements, employment agreements, bylaws. So coming into the process with, first of all, have some information that you've developed. It doesn't need to be a perfect business plan. I mean, our team here, we're going to be doing, obviously, we're going to be taking that information and crafting it into the proper disclosure language within that Form 1A. But to come into the process, if you want to be efficient getting through the process, come in with some narrative that you've developed on the business, its forward plans, its history. Obviously, you need the financials. We don't need audited financials out of the gate. So I do have some clients where they get started with us. They've also engaged their CPA at the same time to get the audit stuff done. We need the audited financials when we're ready to obviously file to the SEC. The other thing that I recommend is in your state of domicile where you're operating is have a solid business attorney at hand. If there's changes to your shareholder agreement, if you need to adjust your bylaws, if you need a certificate of designation drafted, you should have a good business attorney license in the state where you're located and operating, that's aligned with your business, and you're going to want that anyways going forward. So I think when people come into the process, they can help themselves by knowing that we're going to need a lot of detail on the business. And again, I'll make, a comparison to a Reg D. I mean, it's a different level of disclosure. And then, that Form 1A is getting submitted and reviewed by securities attorneys at the SEC. They've seen thousands of these. So I think for people looking to get through the process efficiently, a big part of it is going to be develop some narrative ahead of time. If you have a business plan, great. That'll certainly help. We don't necessarily need a full business plan, but we are going to need information on the business. And then part of our process is really kind of doing a forensic analysis on what has been sent into the firm. What do we need? We need additional detail on this related parties transaction. We need additional detail on this distribution agreement. So that's obviously just part of the process of developing the filing properly, is then pulling out the additional info from the client that we're going to need. So, we do work with small companies that are doing Reg A's. And I think in that case, if it's a 2-person team, 3-person team, it can be done. But at that point, then my suggestion to them is going to be, try and use companies that have embraced technology to manage processes. And I think that's a big change we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, is the advent of using technology to manage securities offering processes, manage compliance, track people through these processes, and then obviously stay engaged with them. As Eitan said, it's important that you don't drop the ball on somebody that's halfway through a process and they're interested in investing, and maybe they had a meeting they had to go to, follow up with them, and that's where technology helps, because it can manage that follow-up better.
Yeah, no, agreed. But it is good to hear that. I mean, thank you for adding it on. And what I was really gearing towards is that I don't want to discourage any entrepreneur. And I think Eitan is saying the same. We're all saying it. We're just getting started. I think that's a great way to say it. We're just getting started. All the other years we were in training wheels, testing it out, and we're seeing what works and what doesn't work. And it's not so much that the one person idea can't make it. It's just the amount of work, the external resources you're going to need from when the offering is live. But even getting to the filing stage, you're going to need to have all the skill set. You're the one person, right? You're the CEO, the CFO, the COO. You're the C everything. And if it's 2, it makes it a little bit balanced. So I'm putting that preface because we're starting to find companies that are asking, okay, so listen, I got a great company. I don't have a CFO. Is this going to be a problem for me? Right? So let me ask you that. I mean, Eitan, I don't have one. I know I can get an accountant to do my books, but do I need a CFO to do that? And then I'm going to come back to you, Douglas, because the other question is, do I need a board of directors? See, and they play a role in Reg D offerings, but here in Reg A, we haven't talked about them yet. So first, I'll go with you, Eitan.
It's helpful. I don't know if it's necessary. Get used to reporting to your investor base, and that might be a new thing for an entrepreneur. This isn't just a text on a Friday afternoon that you can, announcing that you made a couple sales. There's an ongoing reporting requirement every 6 months. So, the financial component and the transparency is, oftentimes could be a lift in what the entrepreneur or the small team is accustomed to. So I would say that having someone that is dedicated to the financials, who's on top of the accounting and the reporting, is important. It's not required to have a CFO, but it's certainly a smart thing to have as you're growing. If you're doing a Reg A, it means that you're looking to raise over $5 million, right? So your company, 5, 10, 20, 50 million, our companies are raising. It's another league, right? So it's representative of that next stage in growth. And so having that corporate structure developed and in place it's a good time to kind of, widen the team a bit. That could, could diversify some of the ongoing responsibilities. But with the right, but it's not required, right? It's not required. You could have a third party accountant or bookkeeper that's helpful, that could fulfill this purpose totally fine. But it is another level of organization and obligation that you need to be prepared for.
And that's a good point. I mean, the key reason why you're doing the RegA is you need working capital to grow your business, and as you're growing your financial reporting requirements and so forth. So you may not have it when you start, but if it's part of the plan, because you need to be ready for all this. There's the pre-stage while you're raising your capital, and Ethan touched on it. What happens afterwards is the other. But the other one is the board of directors. So this is one that we don't talk a lot about. It's not been highlighted yet in the industry, and is that going? At the moment, it's not an issue. I've seen a lot of companies with one board member, right? And typical private companies, it's very small. So where are you seeing that, Doug, yourself and with the firms you're dealing with?
Obviously, it depends on the company and their growth. I mean, we see the same thing. We may see that there's three managers, executive managers, and they happen to be the three board members as well. I think it's beneficial that if you could build out a board that is talented and is there to help the company grow and achieve its objectives. I think it's beneficial to put the time and effort in to build that type of board. But a lot of it comes down to the client and where they're positioned. Driving back to what we were just talking about. What a company might want to look at is that maybe they're not positioned for RegA Plus at the time. I mean, maybe they should, if they feel like they're going to be bootstrapping this operation, maybe what they should do is do a 506C, for example, something a little more simplistic, raise some capital, build out their infrastructure a little bit more, position themselves better for the RegA Plus, and then maybe a year later do the RegA Plus. Because look, RegA Plus is a fantastic program. It's a great vehicle. It fits into a lot of situations and industries and deal types. But I think too, part of this conversation should be also is a company well positioned for it? Because forward growth may dictate the need for a vehicle like a RegA Plus, but what might position them better is doing something that's a little more simplistic, like a 506C, raise a couple $1 million in capital, build your board, build your operations a little bit more, and then position yourself for the A Plus. Because as Eitan mentioned earlier, just having the RegA in place is no guarantee that you're going to have subscriptions coming in. And I think that was a really good point he made earlier, which is you really do have to focus on the investor acquisition side. And so positioning matters. And what might be a better fit then is if it is a 1 or 2 person operation, that maybe they do a more simplistic offering to build their capital base, to move the company forward, to then 12, 18 months later, now they're better positioned to do that RegA Plus and really benefit from it because they've positioned the company better for it.
Okay, that's a great point. So let's move into, so obviously the topic is how do I prepare? So we know what the requirements are, we know how big a team. So based on the type of team you are, you're going to need to select your partners quite carefully. And now more than ever, I firmly believe that we are in the evolution that we need to be putting all the pieces together like a nice puzzle. These are all puzzle pieces together, people. This is all part of the puzzle. So it's there, it'll work. I'm of a different opinion. I feel that what happens here, what happens there, how it moves around right until the end, it needs to be different. And so what advice are you giving clients now today regarding, when it comes to bringing in those auxiliary, from the lawyer to the auditor, the transfer agent to their technology, escrow, credit card, and all that? Because I call it a team sport, right? When you're in meetings, sometimes there's like 22 people on a call, and there's one CEO and one CFO, or maybe, and everybody's working for their goal, but all of us are in sync. I mean, right, Eitan, you and I have seen that a few times. So, I'll start with you because you've seen this right from the birth, right? You were right there, the beginning. You've done more deals than anybody else in the RegA at this point. So the evolution is already here. there's enough data now to back it. And I think it's important now that people understand that the checklist is not just picking a lawyer. It's just, how does it fit in with all of this?
Yeah, there used to not be a whole lot of choices, and the few providers got pretty comfortable, and they got pretty relaxed on customer service. They got pretty comfortable on nickel and diming, and now there's other players that have stepped up, which is very healthy for the market, and people have more choices, right? We get contacted from clients that come to us in a number of different ways. One is from folks that have done their research. They go to the SEC's website, they take a look at all the 1As, they look at the deals that they want to model their own offerings after or that inspire them, and everything's there. Who's the attorney? How much they paid for the attorney? Who's the broker dealer? What are the terms of the agreement? Who's the technology? Everything is there. It's transparent. That's the beauty here, right? It's all available. And all you have to do is Google SEC 1-A and go look at all the SEC filings, right? You'll see us come up. You'll see others come up, and that's an interesting thing that we encourage people to do, just to have as much visibility as to how other people are structuring their offerings. It's available. We get contacted sometimes from companies that have already selected their platform and have already selected their law firm and their transfer agent, and they just need the broker dealer piece, right? And we get contact from companies that say, hey, you're the BD on all these offerings, put it together. Give me the dream team. What does that mean? And so it really depends, right? And what I will tell you is that it's evolving. It's the efficiencies are evolving. A more cost-effective and seamless process has continued to evolve and develop. So what we try to do is understand, what other players have already been selected as part of the issuer's team. And then we look to supplement that versus other times when we get contacted to kind of put together everything, which is more and more frequently, we kind of steer it in that direction. But I do agree with you, Oscar, that there's a benefit now that we've gone through offering after offering. There's a benefit of right from the get-go, structuring everything properly and bringing all the right people in from the beginning. Just that just assures more of an easier flow throughout the process.
Well, it's not only the flow, but you're right. It's also something that we didn't know then. We now know is right. That if you don't plan for that, there's additional costs that the issuer or the broker dealer or other parties need to pay. Is because it's the things you don't see. And so when you start bringing, so I said it's a team sport. You have Douglas. You have Itan, the broker dealer. The broker dealer does compliance. He has a chief compliance officer. Great. There's a transfer agent. That's another entity. There's an escrow provider. That's another entity. There's the credit card, ACH. There's money movement. Okay. And then, of course, let's not forget the shareholder. Look at this individual, right? This individual went to the company's website, ABC Inc., and I'm ready to invest. Everything is there. And all of a sudden, they're being moved around like in a chess game, right? Wondering why I'm being moved from here to here. How come I provided my information here? It's not correct over there, and so on. So, but we didn't know that then. So this is not about criticism. It's about evolution. And when you need to evolve an industry, that's a good thing. David Wield, who is considered the father of the Jobs Act, one of the advisors in our company, so full disclosure, him and I, we speak regularly. He goes, RegA right now is in a momentum, in a very positive momentum. The key for it getting better and better is that the industry needs to evolve with it. So just like COVID-19, it forced people to either embrace it or get up, I'm done. This is no different. We're evolving. So you need to strategically you need to ask questions you never asked before. So what exactly happens to my information when I use you? How do I get it from here to here? And then how does my shareholder get it? And what do they see? What can they do? Why? Because there's another piece to this puzzle we never spoke about before, and that's secondary market trading. See, it now matters what starts right here at the beginning. It matters now more than ever, because if at the beginning, John goes, I really do want to offer my shareholders upon my closing my RegA to trade. Fantastic. If you didn't put all the right pieces here, that goal is going to be twice as costly for you to get there, just because that the broker dealer wasn't the broker dealer you should have had, because you didn't have the right transfer agent. You didn't so it's a trickle down effect. So if it was just one provider, and it's never going to be that way. Broker dealers are broker dealers. Douglas is Douglas. Lawyers are lawyers. Auditors are auditors. But it doesn't mean we can't all work together for you. So on that side. So I mean, Douglas, you've been on the quarterback side, and we've been very grateful working with you. And when I first approached you, I was excited because we are not a quarterback company. We certainly like to help entrepreneurs. I know Etan does. We spend lots of hours speaking to them. The reason why we're doing these webinars, but in reality, we will send them to companies like yourself. Go to Douglas, get yourself nicely set up. But the education starts with you now, making sure that they understand all these different pieces, and to make sure that they're getting these pieces at a timely fashion. Because if they don't get that broker dealer, as Etan said it, at the time of filing, boy, that's going to delay their offering again, because they have to resubmit it, right? So how are you doing that selection today?
So one of the things that I like to push is, first of all, don't come into this process, bootstrapping it. I mean, you really should have a solid budget for coming through the process. And again, I'll reiterate, if you feel like you've got to stretch financially to do this, then maybe you should do a more simplistic offering and raise some money and better capitalize yourself. Because there are benefits to using there's benefits to putting together the right team. Certainly there's companies that execute Reg A pluses and don't have broker dealers affiliated with the offering. It's not really what I would necessarily recommend, although maybe there's times where it is a fit. Again, maybe they've got a handful of states they're selling in, and they've got a deep social media asset base, and they just think that they'll be able to sell it directly. But obviously there's a lot of benefits to having a broker dealer on board. So I think, first of all, a big part of this is putting in place that proper team is going to make for hopefully a more successful offering, obviously. But it's going to make the experience for the investor better. And again, that's why I'm a big fan, and it's why we've been, a core focus of our firm is find ways to use technology to manage these processes better. And we're big on controlling processes internally. I mean, for example, we file directly. We've got all the Edgar conversion software in-house. We don't use third-party filer agents. We file directly because we want control over that process. So I think when people are coming through and they're evaluating doing a Reg A plus, number one, come in properly capitalized for it. Number two, work with best of class and work with companies that have embraced technology in executing these offerings, because these offerings and the way they're getting promoted, it's different. This isn't 2002. And so I think, that's what people ought to look at is, work with the class leading companies that are out there, and especially companies that are using technology, because it will matter. And again, it drives back to what Etan said, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to come through the investment process, invest, and be a shareholder. And then obviously you want to make sure that you're managing them as a shareholder properly and efficiently. So I think that's the thing, is when we're working with clients and they're asking for advice on, how do we put together this team? I mean, look, I can make all kinds of recommendations on investor acquisition companies, on broker dealers, on transfer agents. If it's what I typically push and what I'd like to see the client do is use best of class, use people that are specialists in doing Reg A plus, and use people that have embraced technology, because it's going to matter in the long run.
Yes, I think now, because of the fact that we are evolving and we're getting more, 75 million is going to bring a different asset class of investor and issuer, and therefore the demand by them on us is going to be, I need to know all of it. We've never had that before. People were just like, okay, Douglas, I got you, great. I got Dalmore, they're great. Okay, excellent. And I got that investment. Okay, great. And that was it. That was as far as I remember the early discussions. I got everything. And now we're making sure we're going through a checklist with them. I said, do you have this? I said, great to hear you have the invest. Have they told you how we're going to get the data? What do you mean? Well, I need to know how we're going to get the data, because if I don't get the data, I'm going to tell you the problem we're going to run into. And so people don't think beyond one part. So the good thing is we've now gone to this stage because we're asking all the right questions at the front end. And today's, discussion was, how do I prepare? So preparation is sort of like, you got to see the full race. You got to see it all. You got to see it. You got to visualize it. You got to be able to see the end to end. And very soon, in less than a week's time, we're going to have a page for you so you can go through what an end to end really looks like, from the minute that you select your partners like Dalmore and Douglas, to your transfer agent, to your investor acquisition, your auditor. What happens next? And not only what happens next, what is actually taking place? See, saying, oh, I just put an invest button on my website, I'm ready to go. Okay, great. What happens next? What happens to the investor? Where do they go? What do you mean? Where do they go? How do they get notified? Itan mentioned it. They skip off the process on step 3 or step 2. How do you get them to come back? How do you get them and make them into an investor? Or do you just wash it away and say it's done? Well, maybe hold on. Maybe you should rethink this because there's secondary market trading. Maybe today they don't want to buy, but maybe as you progress, they will. So understanding all these things are going to be critical. Again, they weren't there before. They are there now. So it's fantastic. So this is the time where we ask you, the attendees, all you need to do is click the raise hand. Otherwise, I'll keep talking with my colleagues. If you have questions, I'll let you come in and ask a question away from Itan or Douglas. Obviously, this is it's a lot to absorb, but it's, take the notes, where it starts, talking to the professionals. Itan said it best. This is all public information. There's no, I don't know if you've had this one, Itan, but I got to tell you, I can't disclose the company name, but it caught me off guard. And that is, they go, well, I love RegA. What I would like, is it possible that when they click the invest button, we only show them certain things? And I go, excuse me? I'm sorry. You are talking about a RegA. Yes, a RegA. Great. Okay. But what do you want to keep confident? Well, we want them to sign an NDA to see the rest of the information. And then my question to them was, did you know that your Form 1A was actually filed with EDGAR? And they go, what is that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. EDGAR is a public service feature that you can go to, and you can just type in a company name and you'll get all the documentation. So today I can go there and get, have you run into that, Itan, yourself?
No, not a lot of other things, but no, I haven't been asked that yet. If an NDA has to pop up first, no, yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, I ran into it. It was a real estate deal, and it just caught them way off guard, and I was sort of like, you do know that once it's filed, everybody can see it, and they go, no, that can't be. Well, that is Form 1A. So what I was trying to get at is not so much about them, as Itan said. When you look at a Form 1A, it's all there, how the structure, and who the broker dealer is, who the auditor, the lawyer, all the service, and how much they're getting paid. You've got to love that transparency into getting things done. You're not going in the dark. The only darkness that was there, maybe you don't know how to use EDGAR, and that's fine. But if you go to KoreSummit.io, all the players, everybody we list has done RegAs. So to the point of what Itan was indicating, that you need people who have done it before, it is important that you work with those who have been there, because your cost is going to be a critical element to all of this, right? It will escalate if you have somebody who files a Form 1A and now the SEC comes back at you with questions, because that's where this is the key of creating a proper Form 1A, is getting it there once, maybe 1 or 2 questions. But if it's ongoing, that thing can take 9 months, a year. I've seen a deal go in 2.5 years. The minute you switch a lawyer to it, that's been there, they go, oh, I see the problem. And
that's a great point, Oscar. I mean, I think too, it's funny because I always tell people you can undermine this process by trying to rush through it. Because again, you're submitting this to the SEC. There's securities attorneys there reviewing it. They've seen thousands of these. And if you rush through this, if your disclosures aren't correct, if things aren't formatted properly, you're just going to kick back comments. And so the time you thought you saved by rushing this file through or rushing the process, you're just going to undermine yourself because you're probably going to come back with more comments that you have to deal with from the SEC. I think a big part of this too comes down to education. I mean, if I'm dealing with a software company and they know how to build applications, they know nothing about SEC rules and regulations. And let's be honest, these are complex processes and complex regulations. And so I think education is big too, which is getting information out there. One of the ones we run into a lot is I have a lot of people that call into our firm and they're interested in a tier one. They're interested in a tier one because they're looking to avoid doing an audit. And, there's a couple things that they miss there, which is number one, you're going to have to qualify that offering then at the state level. And a lot of the states under their own state laws and regulations are going to require an audit anyways. And then the cost to pay a firm like ours to qualify you at the state level, you'll quickly reach the point where you could have just paid for the audit and then you could have gone tier two and had all 50 states to sell into. So a lot of times there is an unwinding of bad info that the client's gotten or the potential client's gotten. And a lot of it is just education, which is educate them on the process and get them to understand what they're getting ready to get into. And obviously, we're not here to intimidate them, but we do want them to understand that, again, this isn't a simplistic private placement Reg D that you're doing. I mean, this is something that is going to involve a lot more players. There's more regulations involved. Ultimately, like I said, when you reach the finish line, you've got a great vehicle to go raise money with. But I think that's a big part of it is just the education side, because your typical person evaluating a Reg A plus, they're not a security specialist. They run a software company or they have a beverage company or what have you. And so that's a big part of it is getting them to understand the process, what's going to be involved. And obviously all of these other moving pieces and all of these other companies that are going to be involved to make that offering a success.
I'm going to bring one question to you, Itan. If you haven't run into it, it's okay. But I've now had 5 or 6 clients, and to your point, you said a lot of the investor acquisitions would rather not take on a client because we're almost creating best practices, baby. I don't want to bring that up right here. But have you run into the scenario where the issuer knows how to use Edgar, pulls down the document, said, "Oh yeah, I modified it. Here's mine"?
Occasionally, and occasionally you run into someone that wants to build their own system, right?
Yes.
And wants to put it all together themselves. And then you're like, okay, this is going to be pretty taxing on everyone involved. And and so let me share some war stories with you to discourage you from doing that, or folks who are like you were saying that are considering tier one. I mean, if you could see all of your potential investors down the street, then maybe consider tier one from my own perspective. But even if you're looking to raise under 20, I mean, my personal opinion is tier two is the way to go for a lot of reasons. But yes, you have folks that ask all types of questions. And look, we've seen it, and we've seen how challenging things could be if you kind of try to chart your own course here. Stick with what works. Surround yourself with people that have gone through this many times that could be helpful. You don't see everything if you're going through this for the first time, right? In your research and Google, you're going to come across a lot, but again, I think it's very valuable with all of the service providers that you use, really to leverage the experience they have. This is still a relatively new industry. RegA only really became a thing in like 2018 or so. It started really picking up and popular. And Oscar, to your point, now we're seeing a year or 2 years after when you as a transfer agent, which was like the last step, it's like, okay, now I'm seeing the issues that could have been better thought out at the beginning. There was no real way to know that going into this, right? And now there are, and we're going to keep seeing that more and more. It's going to evolve more and more, and KoreConnects does a really good job, creating a center of gravity in my opinion, in the crowdfunding community, especially with RegA, as a resource for folks to have, video after video of folks that are actually out there doing these deals and going through these issues, that you can really, it's a great resource to use. And I strongly encourage anyone who's considering a RegA to really spend some time taking advantage of it. There's a lot of good research that's available today that wasn't available a year and a half ago, right?
Agreed. It wasn't there. And I want to touch on a really good point for our closing today, because I think we're going to see this more. Why? Because the industry is maturing and people are saying, I really don't like that. So I ran into a couple of companies where the CEO said, to his dev team, build me a better mousetrap, right? And Douglas, you touched on it. Just because you can build a better mousetrap because you want to make it look better doesn't necessarily mean you actually understood why that mousetrap was built the way it was. The step by step, and why you're collecting certain things. So I'm all for people trying to do things on their own. I really am. The Jobs Act, again, what was it? Democratizing of capital, allowing 233 million Americans to invest, giving the ownership back to the owners, making it simple as possible to be able to take advantage of these regulations. So that's all there. And of course, people are going to try to build things on their own. Legals, I wouldn't play with that. That's a cost you don't want to overdo. And I've had situations where people say, I'm as a good paralegal as anybody else, and I know how to read it. I've done these 1,000 times. I go, great, but these are the experts. They have experience. They've been, one of them has got the golden touch. Everything that goes in comes back qualified. So on the technology side, we are seeing a mix of everything, and we're playing audit. So we're being brought in to do audit for companies. What do you think of my investment process? Well, okay, it's got all the basics, but as we go through the compliance audit of it, that's where it collapses, right? Because the developers, you can't blame the devs, they just didn't understand it. So I think it's really important, and none of it is proprietary. I want to be very clear on something. If you go to any website that Dalmore is a broker dealer, you can click the invest button, you can take the screenshots and go, okay, I get this, or you can go to anywhere. And you'll see it and you go, oh, this is simple. You may not understand why it's collecting it this way. This isn't important. And you may think, oh, from a consumer perspective, we can make it smoother and smoother. You have to be real. You have to understand why these things are happening, because we're giving a gift to allowing investors to invest online. It's not something we want to lose that privilege of. And I need everyone here to understand that this is a team sport. And I want to bring one point clear here, that if we try to mimic or create problems here, we're going to lose one of the most valuable components of RegA, and that is the money. What do I mean by that? The money, the credit card providers, the ACH providers, the escrow. Why is that so important? Because they are fully regulated no matter what. There is no shortcuts for them, none. So if we don't pay attention to how this is all done in protecting them, and they cut us off, how on earth is anybody ever going to raise $75 million at $100 a shot online? Not going to happen. Crypto's not there yet. It's getting close, but it's not there. It's not on the everyday. So we really need to make sure we understand what we didn't know then. We didn't know this before. We just thought of it like I call it like a privilege. Sorry, it's my right. It's my right to have credit card and ACH. I call it a privilege. I don't know what you're telling clients, but I'm very clear with every issuer. Listen, it's a privilege. So
yeah, we've seen platforms, unfortunately, that got shut down overnight from being able to accept credit cards, and that's a very difficult position for an issuer to find themselves in when they're spending all their money on advertising and promotion. And we're seeing, 70–80% of investors are using credit cards if you make them available, and so there's a lot that. You want to stick with veterans in the space. In my opinion, you want to realize that there's a lot that you don't know going into this, and to consider. But I agree with you that there's a responsibility that everyone has here to maintain the appropriate integrity as representatives and ambassadors of this industry. right? And that applies to the issuers too. You have to realize that these are real investors. They're putting real money into your deal. You have to treat them properly. You have to be organized. You have to report to them. You have to give them a fair valuation. You have to treat them like you would any other investors. This isn't a quick set it up online, raise money with whatever you want, and then goodbye. It's the beginning of a relationship. It's not the end of a relationship. It's a new way of doing this, and it's closely monitored by the SEC and the regulatory bodies. And our actions today are going to be looked at tomorrow, right? And there's no shortcuts in the regulated world. Everything's on the bright lights are on, right? And so you just you have to think about next year with the decisions you make right now, right? And so that's
agreed. I'm full on with you, and in fact, I'm excited that the industry, this ecosystem that all of us have created, bringing us to each other, working together, and people go, well, they're competitors. No, we're working together. Realistically, we all work together. And we're creating best practices, and we're sharing those with you because we want you to be successful. We know that there's another side that people talk about. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need a broker-dealer. You can do it yourself. And I've met those companies. There's one company I've met that they've been approved for over 3 years. They've raised only less than $75,000 a year. They want to do it all themselves. So that is a route. There is that is the part that people need to understand, that nothing is going to stop you from doing that. But we're going to be educating the investor base on what the best practices are, why it's important to have a broker dealer. Why? It's not just because they do compliance. It's because they do more than just that. They're helping the company make sure that the issuance of the offering is fully compliant. Exactly everything that's being seen and the ads and the webinars are being reviewed by the broker dealers compliance team to ensure that the company is doing a compliance. Because as Itan said, the SEC is looking in, and SEC now has a division specifically looking at RegA. So that's good news for all of us.
Yeah.
But what do you mean? It's good news, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's great news. It just goes to show you that we've now made a difference in the market. So let's do some closing remarks for everyone this afternoon. Just high level, the points on making sure you're prepared. I think we got it, but I'll start with you, Itan, and then I'll close it off with you, Douglas.
I think the points are pick a team that has significant experience, that's done a number of these transactions, that's worked together with other service providers, that could help put you in front of the most cost-effective, efficient, and experienced value-add team. That's critical. Recognize that step one is finding the right, securities attorney, which is Doug is certainly a great choice there. He has a lot of experience. What I love about Doug is that whenever you Google RegA, somehow you're always on top. So kudos to you, brother, for taking that position. And think about what's going to come later now. Right? You have that ability now because we've all gone through this process before. So think about where you want to be after the raise is done. Who's going to communicate with your shareholders? How to make that efficient? What does that even mean? What is secondary trading? How is it applicable to me? How much does it cost? Is it a value add? Is this something I should consider? Do I want to go public? Do I want to get listed on NASDAQ? How does that impact my choices today? Investor acquisition. Do I just bring them in at the end when I'm qualified? Or do I recognize that their input is going to affect how I structure my offering, who my demographic is, what is my investment minimum, how should I build my landing page, right? So the more that you bring in day one, the more you could leverage all of their skill sets in the beginning that could help assure a more successful raise.
Douglas, you're on.
I mean, as running a company, like I said, where we're kind of on the front lines of putting these in place, as far as the document drafting, Form 1A drafting, the filing, and then really working with the client on drawing out what their goals are, what kind of valuation are they using, what type of terms on the securities are they going to be deploying. I would say this, number one, I'll draw back to what I'd said before, which is plan ahead. It's not a 60 or 90-day process. So, plan ahead. I mean, build 5 or 6 months into this process in terms of getting through the prep and the filing and getting it qualified. I mean, a lot of times what we run into is as we start working through building these filings out, that the client runs into decisions or things that might change their business model. And there's some time and effort there for them to then coordinate the that part of their model. I mean, it's in a way, it's almost a, a cathartic process for these people because they know how to run their business. They know their business inside and out, but they never had to articulate it into a filing. They've never had to articulate it to someone that's actually got to create something that's going to get scrutinized by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I would say then, if you're going to go through this process, and if you're going to make the time, effort, and commitment and spend the money to do it, head out with the A-team. And that is put in place the proper pieces, and don't shortcut things, because ultimately you're probably going to undermine your offering. Head out with Dalmore Securities, use KoreConnex, put in place the team, because you're going to go through a long process, and then you're going to take the field, and you're going to take the field with, the missing pieces out of the puzzle if you try and shortcut things, or you try and take a budget approach, for example, to this. So I guess that would be part of what I would say is just, do things right. You get one shot at going to market. You get one shot at making a good impression on investors. Use technology to manage processes. And like I said, come into this process with some information. If you're planning on doing a Reg A plus, start putting pen to paper, start putting down some information on how you operate, and then obviously start, coordinating all of the things that a firm like ours would need, shareholder agreements, bylaws, financials, manager bios, because if you head into the process well prepared, it enables us to get you to the point of qualification more efficiently.
Perfect. I think that was a great way to put it in perspective. Our next webinar we have this afternoon at 3:30 this afternoon. It's all about very specific items. What are the things you need specifically to put in the Form 1A? We always talk about it. It's like this form. You put in your name and address, it gets filed. But we're going to dig deep into it with the lawyers. But listen, Itan, Douglas, great talking to you both. I think we all share the same passion for Reg A. For the audience that's still here, here's the great news. 75 million goes live on the 15th of March, 2021. That's right, it goes live. This is great news for all of us. It's going to enhance the sector, and it's so important now more than ever that the items that both our guests have brought up today that you pay attention to. We are producing information for you. It's on the website at KoreSummit.io. You can get it there, or you can reach out to John Douglas. You'll get the same information, which is great. We're all communicating with you. So I want to say thank you for being with us here at KoreSummit. All of it is being recorded live on YouTube and of course, KoreSummit.io. Thank you, Itan, Douglas. Look forward to seeing you both again.
Thank you, Oscar.
Okay? Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Oscar.